All right, we are Zooming here virtually, interviewing the head basketball coach of the Potomac Panthers in Dumfries, a dynasty that he has built, or should say continued, after coming in from Kendall Hayes, who was an assistant with for many years. They got their first state championship in the 1990s, and then Coach Keith Honore here has brought them two, trying to get a third this year as they are undefeated at 12-0, beating Patriot 71-56 on Thursday to capture their 11th, if my count is right, regional championship at Potomac there. 12-0, moving on to play Landstown High out of Virginia Beach in the state semis, which at the moment, as we record this, Coach, is scheduled for Wednesday. That is subject to change with the weather and everything going on. But first of all, how's life treating you? And congrats on another regional championship.
Oh, thank you, man. Life's good, just trying to navigate our way in this crazy, pandemic. It sounds just kind of odd. We're talking about playing basketball in the midst of a pandemic, but with all that being said, we're fortunate to be able to do it because there are a lot of schools that would certainly trade places with us. So all is good. Kids are in a good place right now. We're locked in pretty good, and we got our sights set on Landstown, which is going to be a handful. They got a great coach, and Coach Robinson. He's certainly not new to this stage. And then they got themselves a heck of a player, and Donald Hand Jr. He's a top 100 kid, and he's got some pretty nice pieces around him. So, we know we got our work cut out for us. We got our hands full, but we're just fortunate and blessed to be here. So.
Sure. Well, we'll get to that game here to finish up a little bit later on. But I want to go back to something I've done with some other coaches in previous Zooms, whether it be Dwight Robinson, as you mentioned, at Landstown, or Mike Robinson from South County, Kenny Harris at Green Run, and others. And that's kind of the standard question I'm going to ask everybody, Coach. And that is, when we were in November, December, did you think we'd ever get to this point, even have a season? And I know in your case, it's been even more challenging because you guys were one of the few that got on the pause situation as well.
Sure. No, I have to say, I never thought we'd make it to the first game. I thought this was a situation where, the powers that be said, you know what, we're gonna give this a shot, knowing that it's not gonna work. I was very pessimistic, and I'm not a pessimistic person. But this situation, I wasn't very optimistic about. And then after we got past the first week, I was like, wow, my coaches, me and my coaching staff, we actually had a bet. We actually picked days that, like, down to the day that they would shut us down. And we all got past that day. Nobody won. So in the end, the head coach wins. So
yeah, you win.
So, but no, I'm shocked, man. I never thought we'd get to the end. And then, I was preaching early on to my kids about putting yourself in a bubble and being careful who you're around. And the more and more I talked about it, sure enough, we went into COVID protocol. One of our guys got it. We went into protocol for 2 weeks. Didn't practice for 2 weeks. No contact for 2 weeks. We came out of that thing, had one practice. And our kids picked up, man. And I tell you, those kids are resilient. I used to get anxiety over, when we had bad weather and we couldn't practice for a day or two. I'd get, real anxious and worried, and then not practice 2 weeks and to see how our kids responded to that. I did an article a couple of weeks ago, and I meant it. If I had to go through this with any team, this is the team to do it. With that veteran leadership, they're built for stuff like this. And they're locked in. They have something that they want to accomplish, and they're goal driven right now. And the things that they're trying to accomplish is trumping this pandemic. It's trumping us not being able to practice. It's trumped having to play back to back on a day notice. Like, they're focused and they're willing to be flexible when they need to be, and they're adapting well. So I wish I could sit here and tell you, this is because I'm such a great coach, but it's not. It's really because we have great kids, great players, and they're locked in pretty good right now.
And you use the word flexible, and watching your team play, which I've gotten the privilege to do a few times through the NFHS network on the stream. Your lineup, you have a lot of flexibility with that. And we'll touch on that in a moment. But going back to something that struck me, even when we did with the great folks at the Prince William Sports Media Group, they did that media day virtually this year, and your team was one of the many on that. And something kind of hit me towards the end of that your session with a couple of your guys, specifically Kijan Rainey and your son Kyle Honore. They both kind of had a laser-like focus, and you could kind of see like, all right, these guys are driven to go get back to where they were last year and go further. Which some of these teams that win championships do that. Last year, you guys fell in the state quarterfinals to a very good Western Branch team, who's one of just 4 of the 54 schools in Class 6 not getting the opportunity to play. But I think that probably that experience and that, like you mentioned, goal-oriented, that drive has shown up for you, because the first 2 games you played, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys played really outstanding defense in beating Garfield and Woodbridge, and then you went on pause. So probably that experience and maturity helped you get through that and navigate that difficult time.
Sure. So our first 2 games, we were stellar defensively. I mean, we were suffocating. And then the 2 weeks off, when we came back, we were not as good defensively as we were before we went on, and that was to be expected. So the thing that I preached to my guys were, the only thing that's going to make up for us being out of position and lack of execution is we're going to have to play really, really hard. And to their credit, they did that. And then you talked about the laser focus. One of the things that struck me was last night after our Patriot game. That was a game, that was a highly anticipated game by our community. So many people have wanted to see that game for quite a few years. A lot of people anticipated it would have been in a regional championship last year, but Patriot didn't make it. So a lot of people were disappointed. So they got their wish this year, and a lot of people wanted to see, how Patriot matched up with us. And a lot of our kids were hearing a lot of rumblings about, this is the team to overtake Potomac. Patriot was a team that somebody could finally knock them off in our area. And our kids took that personal. They took it to heart. And regional championship game, all that noise that they were hearing, we played really well, and we beat a really good Patriot team. And we answered a lot of the critics about, is it time for Patriot to overtake Potomac? On the bus ride home, it was dead silence. Like, I'm, believe it or not, I'm the bus driver. I drive the bus. So I was talking to my coaches, and I said, guys, our kids just won a regional championship, and you don't hear a word. And they was like, yeah, that is kind of odd. And I said, you know why? I said, because this isn't what they want. This is not what they came for. So they unfortunately, this is unfortunate for them. They really don't have an appreciation for what they've already accomplished, right, and what they've had to go through to accomplish what they've already accomplished. A part of me I feel sad for them, but the competitor in me is like, oh yeah, we're locked in, Jack. And so that struck me as, okay, this ain't good enough for them. So I don't know what's going to happen over the next week. I wish I was a genie and can tell you, but I can tell you this: no matter who we play, they're going to lay it on the line, and they're going to leave it all out there, and we won't have any regrets if we don't accomplish our goal.
Well, and I think this goes with some of the programs in the state, and yours is one of them that has been successful for a long period of time. That Potomac name across the jersey, it brings out the best in other teams. And then when there's that big game, I think it brings out the best in your guys. And to your point, I mean, Trey Nelson, Chad Watson, one of the best backcourts, certainly up there. But in the first quarter, the way you locked them up, I mean, 21-5 first period, nobody's done that all year. I think you got to a 12-0 lead. And it's interesting. I've had this conversation with other coaches too, Keith, is that you're kind of in that mixed bag of enjoying this, but also knowing that at any moment it can go away, staying focused on the one day, one game at a time, which is so cliche, but it's never been more true this particular year and this season, and getting that ultimate prize at the end. I think too, beginning of this playoff run, you guys have been playing so well and consistently. And in Battlefield, they threw a really good game at you guys, had you down at the break, and showed a lot of resolve in that game. And one of the guys, we'll get some of your key players now. I mean, Kajan Rady made some clutch free throws, and I thought he played really well yesterday. One of the many guys you got on this team, Anthony Jackson, Tyrell Harris, who's certainly a next-level prospect. Your son, as we mentioned, and Kyle. We got on a list of Caleb Satchel making some key plays defensively, draw charges. Tell us, the audience, the fans out there that haven't watched your team play, about some of these young men and what they've done to make the sum greater than the individual parts.
Well, I'll sum it up. I had a conversation with a college coach this morning, and one of my guys are going to visit this weekend, and we're trying to work out some logistics because we want to practice, and we certainly want him to go visit. Well, that one guy doesn't even start for us. It's Lauren Hall.
Who's really good, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, the coach said, the assistant coach I was talking to, he said, Coach, I was telling some other coaches, like, I'm certainly not comparing this Potomac team to the Randy Hayes and Trey Porter team. Mm-hmm. He said, but I haven't seen many public schools who have 8 kids that can play college basketball on some level. And it's true. We have 8 guys. That's not counting our young guys that really should be playing college basketball at the next level. So, I'll start with Keyshawn Rainey. What a story, man. He's a kid that he's a year older than my son, and he plays the same position as my son. How many kids would put themselves in that position of his talent level? Mm-hmm. Most kids would look at that and be like, look, I ain't going to play for a coach whose son play the same position as me. And, he was at a crossroads last year. Kyle started over him. And, he had that doubt had set in, and, he and I had a conversation, and he and I came to an agreement. And I just told him, I said, look, if you can be a certain type of player for us, you don't have anything to worry about. And he's knocked it out of the park. He has senior leadership. He's a kid with a, 4.0 GPA. His teammates love him. He's extremely mature. And then on top of the fact that the icing on the cake is he's extremely talented. So, for us, I had to convince both of those guys. The only thing that's better than a great point guard, Matt, is having 2 of them. Mm-hmm. And so I told our guys, I said, listen, if I'm going to play 2 point guards, I tell you what, we better be the most organized basketball team on the floor. And we better make, damn good plays every time down the floor. And they've done that. So, that's Keyshawn. I mean, Tyrell Harris is just, that kid, he's just he's Mr. Efficiency. I mean, if you look at his numbers the last 3 games, I guarantee he's shooting 85% from the field over the last.
That's a problem too, isn't
he? He is. He last night, Patriot ramped up their pressure a little bit. We knew they were going to start trapping. We put the ball in his hands. Now we got a 6'6" guard that can see over the top, and we got layup after layup, with the ball in his hands. So, his numbers speak for itself. In my opinion, he's district player of the year. He's the regional player of the year, and we'll have a chance to be state player of the year if they were to do that this year. Certainly one of the top 3, top 5 guys in the state of Virginia, in my opinion. We got Kyle, my son. Kyle, if we really turned him loose and let him just kind of run wild, his numbers would be off the chart. I mean, he's extremely skilled. He can shoot it in more. He's not just a catch and shoot kid. He can shoot it off ball screens. He can get downhill and make plays. And then what I really like that he's really done well this year is he's shown that he can still be an asset even when he's not scoring. He can be a facilitator. Yeah. And that's the mark of a great point guard. Having a feel for the game and understanding what's the game calling for. There was one game he had 7 points, but he had 9 assists. So I like his versatility. I like the fact that, he's not a one-dimensional point guard. we got guys like Caleb Satchel. He's our Swiss Army knife. You saw what he did for us last night. And the thing that's unfortunate about him is a lot of the stuff that he does doesn't show up in the stat sheet. But every great team needs a Caleb Satchel. There's nothing that he can't do. He can shoot it. He can put the ball on the floor. He can attack the basket. He rebounds the hell out of the basketball. He takes charges. He gets loose balls. I mean, he's a lot of people take this as an insult, but it's actually a compliment. He's the glue guy. He's our vocal leader. You're going to see him. He never shuts up on the floor. He's constantly talking. He's constantly putting guys in the right places, especially on the defensive side of the basketball. Anthony Jackson told a guy last night, everybody labels him as a shooter. When he shoots the ball, the entire gym stands up. But it's such a disservice to him to call him a shooter. He is a great, great defender. And a lot of times when you see guys who are shooters, they tend to not guard the other team's best players for fear of wearing them out, which takes away from them shooting.
So true, yeah.
He guards the other team's one or two best players. He leads our team in block shots.
He's surprisingly athletic, by the way. I've watched him a couple times, like, go off the floor. I'm like, oh, man, he's a good athlete.
He is. He's deceptively athletic. And obviously he can shoot it, but he's turned himself into a great basketball player. So we don't call him a shooter anymore. That's just something we know he does. He's a hell of a basketball player, and that's probably the best way to label him at this point.
By the way, you haven't even gotten to the guy I think yet is the most improved player in all of Class 6, which I think you're going to get to next.
Which is whom?
Larry Wright.
Larry Wright, yes.
Do you disagree with that, by the way, or no?
No. And if there was when Tyrell Harris, we missed Tyrell for a few games. Mm-hmm. He had 16 and 16 in the game Tyrell was out. But there was another guy I'm super proud and super happy for that kid. He was another kid that was at a crossroads. I'm not an easy guy to play for. I'm demanding and sometimes overbearing. And it really affected him psychologically. He got to a point where he's like, man, I don't know if I can deal with this dude. And he and I had a conversation, and I told him, if you stay here, I promise you, you'll be better for it in the end. I said, I'm not going to let up. I'm not going to take my foot off your neck. I'm going to constantly put pressure on you to be the best Larry Wright you can be. And, he had to do some soul searching. And, fortunately for him and fortunately for us, he decided, you know what, I'm going to stick this out and see where this leads me. And he's made himself into a phenomenal basketball player, a recruitable athlete. And he's one of the guys, I think he and Keyshawn and Lauren Hall, I think those three guys, their best basketball days are ahead of them. I think you're going to see them. They're going to be better college players than they are high school players.
Mm-hmm. Well, my last one on those guys, and we'll get to kind of your matchup here and this some things up here. I don't know that this is the best Potomac team or most talented team, but I get the sense that this could very well be the most versatile and deepest team. You're feeling on that right now with the maximum of 2 games left, a minimum of 1 here.
I don't. It's really hard for me to say. Where this team ranks amongst the others.
Because you're in it, right?
Because I'm in the midst of it, and I usually reflect on that after they're gone. But the one thing that I will say is, and this is probably the most important piece, I don't think to them it's important to be the best Potomac team ever or one of the best Potomac teams ever. To them, it's important that they hold the rope. It's our turn to hold the rope for this program. It's our turn to hold the rope for this tradition. And we don't want to be known as the team that drove the car in the ditch. So if it ended today, they've done their job. They've kept our tradition intact. They've kept Potomac at a place, and they've maintained our standard. And they could stop today, and their legacy is cemented in our program. But they got a little bit more left in them, and they're fighting because, we've had a lot of great teams at Potomac that didn't win a state championship, but for them, they're driven by eliteness. They want to be amongst the elite. They want to be there with 95. They want to be there with 2014, and they want to be there with 2016. So they're driven for that. And again, if it ended today or if it ended last night, we're talking about a team that won 3 district championships, 2 regional championships, and a ton of basketball games. There's 95% of the teams in the state can't say they even won a regional championship. They've won 2. So, but they want to be with the elite. They want to be with the elite 3, and that's what we're coaching them for that right now.
Well, this hasn't been the standard 22-game season, but
Mm-hmm.
even in an abbreviated campaign, the list of teams that are undefeated right now, it's a small grouping of them in any classification. You're the only one left in Class 6, which is the largest of teams playing, and I would argue this year's the best. You used to be in the division that I thought was the best, which was Class 5. There's only one of them left in Green Run that's undefeated. There's one in Class 2, I believe, in Radford. And I think that might be it for the whole state. Like you're one of those left. So even though it's not a 22 gamer and you can't really get into legacies and where people rank now, especially in a year like this, which it's, you got some not playing, some not, it's still something I think that has to be celebrated for you and your guys. That being said, you have a tough opponent, as you mentioned, Landstown coming up on the road. You've done this 7-5-7 trip before, not only for our Virginia Preps Classic, but also a memorable game when you won your first state championship as a head coach when you beat Maury at Old Dominion, and coming down to play a Landstown team. I know you've got to really relish the opportunity to play a team that, much like yours, built on defense first and foremost, which is what wins championships.
Absolutely. That's what we hang our hat on. Every great team, whether in any sport, has an identity, whatever that is, and our identity has always been, we're going to defend, and we're going to defend until the end. And so that hadn't changed with this group. As far as for being left, with the unbeaten, it's certainly a heck of an accomplishment, Matt. But I'll say this, people, you're going to always have the critics who are going to say, well, this was an abbreviated season. It was an easier season. And, some people, I've even heard some people say we should put an asterisk on the side of it. And it kind of pissed me off at first, but
you're not alone.
I got to thinking about it, and I actually changed my thought process. I was like, you know what? We should put an asterisk on the side of this, but not for the reasons they're thinking. We need to put an asterisk on the side of it because no one should ever forget that these kids had to play with masks on. No one should ever forget that these kids had to play an entire year without any fans. They had to play an entire year without their parents being able to watch them play in person. They've had to play an entire year without their student body cheering them on. What a disadvantage it was last night for Patriot not to have their crowd there. We should never forget that, these kids, had to miss 2 weeks and come back, have one practice and expect to play, so this is something that, yes, we should put an asterisk on the side, but not because we're trying to label this as an easy season. We need these kids to be celebrated for the difficulties that they've had to go through, and for how resilient, not just Potomac, but all kids all across this country, how resilient they are to play through this pandemic and all this weird stuff that we're being asked to do. So for me, I celebrate them. And I look at them. I've always labeled this generation as a entitled generation and a soft generation, but they've proved me wrong. They, and it's given me hope that this younger generation, how resilient they are through all this. They're showing their toughness, they're showing their grit, and they're showing there's some tough kids.
Well put. And to kind of echo that, I mean, I've gone back to even last year when I've heard people say that, oh, well, those teams aren't really champs, they're co-champs. And even one person, and I won't name the name, said that those teams that won shouldn't get states, they should have co on them. I'm like, really? You're going to throw it back in the kids' face to this extent? Right. And you hear it on the pro level and college level with the Lakers or the Dodgers or Alabama or the Tampa Bay Lightning, college football, hockey, included with the NBA and Major League Baseball. I think there's different circumstances that this isn't the asterisk with, baseball records with the steroids. This is the asterisk of something like you just said. It's a lot different. And, the phrase that really, I think, bugs me the most, not to get on a soapbox or rant here, is people say, well, this is the Cracker Jack ring. And I'm like, No. This hasn't been selling popcorn, peanuts, Cracker Jacks. This has been a whole different ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're going to always have your critics and your naysayers, and that's fine. I think they're a necessary evil, to be honest with you. You need those type of guys to remind you when you forget how well you've done and the good things that you've done. You just talk to one of those guys and you'll be quickly reminded about, what you've accomplished and how good your kids are. So, again, man, this is a weird time. It's a crazy time. It's certainly something that it's a historic. I think this is historic, and I'm glad I have the team that I have. I'm glad I have the support that I have, the administration and the coaching staff that I have to help us navigate these waters. It's certainly been different. It's challenged me as a coach, and that's great. As coaches, we always look for challenges, and this has been challenging. I'm just thankful for my support system and the kids that I'm coaching that they've been helping navigate this.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Best wishes to you and your squad coming up on Wednesday night or whenever that game will be played against the Landstown Eagles in the state semifinals. And if you're fortunate enough to win, you'll be playing in the championship round against the Region C or D champion. We got 4 teams left from that field as we record this now, with Madison and Centerville in Region 6D, as well as Hayfield and South County in Region 6C. Best of luck to you, and safe travels. Stay safe.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
You bet.